Hello, welcome to ArtBookNook, where I share my amazing collection of art and craft books with you. I've been fascinated by pop-up books ever since I was a small child. I would spend hours and hours opening and closing the pages, trying to understand how they worked. I even dreamt of becoming a paper engineer, and over the years I've collected quite a number of these magical books. Today I'm sharing the art of pop-up, and together we'll explore the world of pop-ups, movable books, flip books and mechanical cards, and discover some of the pioneers behind these ingenious paper mechanisms. This book presents a selection of both classic and contemporary artists who have taken traditional techniques and revitalised the craft with their astonishing creations. I can't wait to share this with you. We'll begin with movable books. So what exactly is a movable book? Well, unlike traditional books, their defining feature is interactivity. They invite the reader to lift flaps, turn wheels and unfold three-dimensional structures, which transforms the page and adds an element of surprise. There's nothing more exciting than getting a new pop-up book and not knowing what's going to happen when you open the pages. Movable books have a long and fascinating history. Early examples date right back to the 13th century, when scholars used rotating paper mechanisms called volvels to calculate astronomical and mathematical information. Later, layered anatomical diagrams allowed readers to lift flaps and explore the human body in stages. These ingenious paper devices showed that interactive books were originally tools for learning, not just entertainment. By the 18th century, movable books began to evolve into playful objects. Publishers created novelty books filled with flaps and theatrical scenes that changed as the pages moved. These delighted readers and laid the foundations for the imaginative pop-up and movable books we know today. Chapter 2, Techniques. This chapter introduces different types of movable and pop-up books and highlights several of the early innovators who shaped the form as we know it today. One of the most significant figures is the German illustrator Lothar Meggendorfer, often recognised as the father of the pop-up book. His genius lay in complex pull-tab mechanisms that enabled multiple parts of an illustration to move at once. A single tab could animate a character's arms, head, legs simultaneously, creating lively, often humorous scenes. His work was widely popular and commercially successful, influencing generations of paper engineers. I'm lucky to own one of Meggendorfer's movable books, and the mechanisms are really clever. If you'd like to see them in motion, I filmed a separate video demonstration and you'll find the link in the description below. This spread also includes panoramic theatre scenes and animated animal illustrations, early examples of how movement could transform storytelling. Many of the core mechanical principles of modern pop-up books can be traced back to pioneers such as Meggendorfer and his contemporaries. Another early innovator was Ernest Nister, a German publisher whose name became closely associated with changing or dissolving pictures. He produced books and paper novelties celebrated for their mechanical ingenuity, often depicting idealised scenes of childhood. Nister devised a system of rotating discs that transformed the images as they turned. As the disc moves, one picture gradually gives way to another. I have quite a number of reproductions of Nister's books, and I try to collect examples of each different mechanism he employed. And if you'd like to see these in action, I've put a link to another video in the description below. The next few pages showcase a variety of movable book formats, each using different techniques and mechanisms to create movement and depth. We'll begin with Julian Ware's Clever Books, early examples of layered mechanical illustrations designed so that the movement unfolds across several parts at once. These playful constructions laid the groundwork for many later paper mechanisms. We also encounter the imaginative world of Wojciech Kubasta, whose theatrical scenes and architectural pop-ups brought dramatic storytelling into 3 dimensions, blending illustration, stage design and engineering. Mix and match books are pages divided into sections that can be flipped independently to create endless combinations of characters and images, inviting readers to become collaborators in the storytelling. From there, we have concertina and carousel books, formats that transform reading into a spatial experience. So instead of turning pages, the book expands outwards, unfolding into a sculptural form that can be viewed from multiple angles. I used to love these as a child. I used to imagine myself wandering around inside the scenes. Folded strips that pivot outward to reveal layered imagery are called flag books. This technique is a really good way of displaying photographs as well. Tunnel books use receding cut paper layers to create depth and perspective. It's like peering into a miniature stage set. They also offer a wonderful way to reuse old watercolour studies. They don't need to stay hidden in a drawer, so why not transform them into something new by cutting, layering and reimagining them? Here is a selection of movable and mechanical cards. Even with the simplest of mechanisms, such as tabs, discs and cut paper layers, artists have created movement, humour and elements of surprise. Here are some lovely examples of miniature pop-ups and flip books where the motion is created through rapid page movement. These are the early ancestors of animation. Let me know in the comments below if you've ever made one. Little stick figures that move. Optical illusion books use layered images, grids and shifting elements to produce visual transformations as the page moves. Sort of more modern examples of this are lenticulars. I don't know if you've ever seen them. They're like pictures and they look 3D. We'll now look at some more contemporary paper engineering, which includes action origami, sculptural folds and architectural constructions that blur the line between books, objects and sculpture, and very intricate work by modern artists who use paper not simply as a surface but as a structural material, building cities, landscapes and abstract forms entirely from folded or cut sheets of paper. Together, these pages reveal that movable books are not a single genre, but a vast creative language, one that combines illustration, design, mathematics, theatre and play. We're now going to take a look at some themes in pop-up books and also some public and private collections. So the first spread highlights two public collections dedicated to movable books, showing how these ingenious paper mechanisms have been valued for centuries, from early educational models explaining science and anatomy to 20th century pop-ups produced for popular audiences. Here we step into the world of private collectors, where dedicated individuals like Anne Montanaro, founder of the Movable Book Society, have played a vital role in preserving, studying and celebrating the ingenuity of movable books. Today, the Society is an international community of more than 450 members, bringing together collectors, historians, artists, paper engineers, publishers and booksellers. I've linked to their website and their YouTube channel below, where you can enjoy recordings of their quarterly meetings and show and tell sessions. It's well worth the watch if you love pop-up books. You'll also find a link to another well-known collector, Ellen Rubin, also known as the Pop-Up Lady, who's been documenting her adventures in the pop-up world for decades. Annette Veenstra lives in the Netherlands on a barge called Oostenwind, which travels through European waters. She says once you start collecting, you can never really stop. And Julien Laparade speaks about the joy his collection brings him. I actually have the book shown bottom left in my own collection. It's called Trail, it's completely white and it's absolutely beautiful. So let me know in the comments below if you'd like me to film it for you. In A Pop-Up Lover's Journey, Patrick Lecault from France shares several of his favourite books. I actually have a copy of the Encyclopedia of Mythical Creatures shown here with the red Chinese dragon. I've been collecting art and craft books for about 35 years now, so if there's ever a title you'd like to see featured, do let me know and I'll happily add it to my filming list for you. We usually think of alphabet books as just for toddlers, But take a look at these examples from Bernard Farkas's collection. He highlights how creators use movable techniques like these incredible pop-ups to turn simple letters into 3D art. Some of these styles date back 400 or 500 years. It's not just about learning your ABCs. These books are like little time capsules, reflecting the art and the vibe of their era. Collector Danny Trick has built an amazing collection of magic-themed movable books. He's a professional magician and a member of the Magic Circle in London. I've softened part of the right-hand page here just to ensure my review of this amazing book remains suitable for all viewers. Paper engineers are always searching for new ways to surprise and delight us, creating mechanisms that become ever more intricate. Since the late 1970s, when Jan Pienkowski's Haunted House captured imaginations, the popularity of pop-up books has continued to grow. Many are produced in limited editions, and when carefully preserved, they can become treasured and sometimes valuable works of art in their own right. Here are a few examples of pop-up comic strips, often called the ninth art, as not many get made. Experimental and artist-made pop-up books, whether they're one-of-a-kind pieces or produced in very small numbers, share something fundamental with commercial pop-ups, that every mechanism must still be assembled by hand. These unique works of art often push the field forward, introducing new ideas and techniques. On the right-hand page, for example, Paul Johnson's constructions avoids folds altogether, using dovetail joints to connect the elements instead. It's a very inventive approach that reduces wear and tear and gives the structures remarkable durability. I was fortunate enough about 10 years ago to spend a whole weekend learning Paul's dovetail joint technique at one of his workshops. It was a truly memorable experience. Paul begins by painting sheets of watercolour paper, about 300 gram, 140 pound, in lively, vibrant colours. He then cuts the shapes out and assembles them into his incredibly creative constructions. I'm delighted to have found some of the photographs I took on the workshop, and I put a link below to Paul's website where you can see some of his individual one-off creations that are available for sale and find out a little bit more about Paul. We now turn to the work of several highly respected professional paper engineers whose names are well known within the pop-up world. We begin with Andrew Barron, who answers the question, what is a paper engineer? He explains that a paper engineer is the person who quite literally puts the pop into pop-up. So working from an illustrator's artwork, they design the mechanisms that make the pages move, translating drawings into carefully engineered folds, tabs and structures. It's a collaborative and highly technical process that can take many months, moving from initial sketches and prototypes to digital layouts and factory production, with much of the final assembly still done by hand. David A. Carter trained as an illustrator. Although the mechanisms in his work are based on quite simple structural ideas, he uses them in imaginative ways. In the elements of pop-up, he begins with basic templates and gradually develops them, creating bold sculptural forms. There's something really joyful and playful about his work. David has created a vast number of lovely pop-up books, not to mention large structural pop-ups for exhibitions. One very special book is The Elements of Pop-Up, which is often referred to as the definitive book on how to make a pop-up. It contains actual working mechanisms and templates, which you can also download from David's website. And now we hear directly from the amazing Robert Sabuda. If he were to offer advice to a young artist wanting to become a paper engineer, he says quite simply, spend as much time as you can folding paper. Make mistakes, learn from them. Robert speaks about the future of pop-up books too. Electronics may play a larger role, with more books lighting up or making sounds. For him, the success of pop-ups comes from people wanting something physical again, something that doesn't need a battery or need plugging in. And Robert believes it's that tactile experience which is central to what pop-up books offer. A good pop-up book, he says, should surprise you. Illustrated in the spread are 2 pages taken from Robert Sabuda's wonderful book Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. Here we see two very different approaches to creating pop-up books. Chuck Fisher works largely in limited editions, and his books can take well over a year to create. He researches the subject carefully, paying close attention to architectural and historical detail. As Chuck is not a paper engineer, he works closely with paper engineers Bruce Foster and David Hawcock, and also with printers to bring these sculptural pieces together. His books are designed not just to entertain, but to inform as well. On the other hand, Case Moorbake reflects on practicality. Pop-up books might be enjoyed by children, but they must be robust enough to survive being handled. A mechanism needs to be simple enough to function reliably, yet still engaging. Case also points out the reality of production, the many hours of manual assembly that makes pop-up books expensive to produce. For Case, structure and packaging are just as important as the pop-ups themselves. As a paper engineer, Bruce Foster has designed books for both children and adults, as well as titles on architecture, film and sport. Each project brings new challenges and the opportunity to find new solutions. More recently, he was given the task of translating the world of Harry Potter into pop-ups. What a privilege! Creating Hogwarts Castle from paper was a particular challenge, but one that Bruce especially enjoyed. Bruce explains that it takes years of practice to become a skilled paper engineer. His advice to anyone starting out is to study published works closely. Get to understand how the mechanisms function. Once you truly grasp them, you can begin to adapt them, break them down and make them your own. Whatever the subject, Bruce aims to bring something new to each project, presenting the pop-up in a way that feels fresh and unexpected, creating a surprise not only for the reader, but for himself as well. Christine Shaw is a paper engineer from Denmark. Her interest in paper automata first led her into the world of pop-ups and movable structures. Automata are essentially moving sculptures, little mechanical scenes that come to life when you turn a handle. In many ways, automata and pop-ups are closely related. They both rely on carefully designed mechanisms to create movement. The difference is that automata are usually powered by a crank rather than opening of a page. Christine later studied conservation and chose pop-up books as the focus of her thesis, seeing them as a natural extension of mechanical paper forms. For Christine, pop-ups are about bringing simple mechanisms to life. You don't need expensive materials, just cardboard, patience and curiosity. Here we're introduced to Ray Marshall as he reflects on his work. Ray explains that one of the main challenges in designing pop-up structures is ensuring they close cleanly without catching or collapsing. With experience, he has also become increasingly aware of how the quality of paper and printing can elevate the finished result. Ray describes pop-up design as a balance between creativity and careful problem solving. Some scenes need to compress neatly when closed, while others must open widely without becoming unstable. Each book brings him new lessons, gradually refining his approach and extending what he can achieve in paper. Tina Kraus from Germany grew up surrounded by books, and like many of us, she was particularly fascinated by pop-ups. She began by studying pop-up books closely, taking them apart in order to understand how the mechanisms work. While studying at university, Tina had the opportunity to create her first real book. From the outset, she was interested in making something visually striking. Her design process is highly methodical. She begins by sketching ideas, then builds very simple prototypes from paper, often revising them many times over before they function properly. Only once the mechanism works reliably does she move on to the illustrations. The work shown here is her student project book called Circus Zingaro, and it's absolutely joyful and very inventive. I don't think this has been published commercially, which is a great shame, as I'm sure it would be very successful. As you may have gathered, throughout the Art of Pop-Up book, which I'm reviewing today, There are so many paper engineers, collectors and organisations connected to the world of pop-ups. So rather than overwhelm this video description with a very long list of external links, I'll compile a comprehensive resource list for you and make this available on my ArtBookNook website. I will link to that in the video description below. Well, there are still 19 more paper engineers in this section, so rather than test your listening stamina any further, I'm going to let the next few spreads unfold to some nice music, but I'll link all of the featured artists in the resource page I just mentioned, so you can take your time and explore them properly if anything interests you. In Beyond Pop-Up, which is the final section, we look at the many places, other than books, that pop-up structures now appear, such as in advertising materials and theatre productions. In digital art, animations have been made that bring pop-up books to life. And something we don't often think about is what happens when pop-up books become damaged. How can they be restored? Pop-ups rely on folds, pivots and glued joints. They are naturally vulnerable. Over time, paper weakens, joints split, tabs tear and mechanisms can collapse or distort. Restoring them requires not just care, but an understanding of how they were constructed originally. Conservators emphasise that restoration should always be minimal and reversible. The aim is not to make a book look new, but to stabilise it. And it's important to avoid modern adhesives that might cause long-term damage. What I find fascinating here is that restoration requires the same understanding as design. To repair a mechanism, you must first understand exactly how it works. Showcased here are examples of courses and workshops where you can study paper engineering more formally, learn the history of movable books, explore key mechanisms and design your own interactive pop-ups. This spread shows that pop-up books are not just artistic, they're also powerful educational tools, helping children learn through making and discovery. In Japan, pop-up design helps children understand three-dimensional space. By drawing, cutting and building simple paper structures, students learn how flat shapes become 3D forms. It connects art with geometry and helps develop spatial awareness. And in France, libraries and cultural centres use pop-up books in exhibitions and workshops. Children explore how the mechanisms work and then create their own moving books. These activities encourage curiosity, hands-on learning and creative problem solving. This really useful fold-out guide introduces the different types of techniques used in movable books, 2- and 3-dimensional mechanisms, different types of binding and the different materials used. This will come in really handy. And next we move on to a selection of models, some templates that you can actually photocopy or actually cut out the book, but I'd suggest photocopying it. We begin with a movable dancing couple, followed by the Japanese origami architecture card and a tunnel book. Here's a rotating disc template. This was used in Ernest Nister's Book of Christmas, and I've actually linked to a video of it in action in the description below for you. Next we have a slice form template where you can build a globe with two cats playing together, followed by a pop-up card with a lotus flower in the centre. That would be a lovely thing to make, wouldn't it? To send to a friend or for their birthday or Mother's Day. And once again, a great way to reuse your watercolour scraps. And finally, the last model is a spiral petal book. That looks like a lot of folding to me. I'm not sure I'll be having a go anytime soon, but if you try it, do let me know. The book concludes with comprehensive acknowledgements, a useful bibliography and full picture credits, which reinforces its value in my mind as a well-researched reference book. So to bring everything together, this isn't a how-to book. It's not a step-by-step guide to making pop-ups. Instead, it's a substantial reference volume, part history, part celebration, exploring movable books, the paper engineers who create them, and the many ways pop-ups have found their place within our wider culture. The book itself is beautifully produced. The pages are printed on thick matte stock, almost like a light card, which feels entirely appropriate for the subject. It has the presence of a coffee table book, but the depth of a serious reference. What the art of pop-up really highlights is how collectible and treasured pop-up books have become. As editions go out of print, many also increase in value over time. So they're not just playful objects, they're pieces of design history. I originally thought this would be a really quick review. Instead, I found myself disappearing down a pop-up rabbit hole for several days on end, listening to interviews with paper engineers, researching mechanisms. I've had a lovely time though. But perhaps the real strength of this book is it encourages you to look again and to look more closely. Pop-up techniques lend themselves to all sorts of possibilities. Handmade cards, artist books, theatrical sets, even advent calendars. And once you start noticing these mechanisms, you'll begin to see them everywhere. So do you love pop-ups? Have you ever tried making one? I'd be interested to know, so do leave me a comment below. I reply to every one. If you'd like your own copy of The Art of Pop-Up, you'll find links in the description below. If you choose to use them, it helps to support my channel, where I may earn a small commission. You'll also find a link to the downloadable PDF on my ArtBookNook website, containing links to all of the paper engineers and resources mentioned in this video. So I hope you've enjoyed my review. Thank you so much for watching, I do appreciate it, and until next time, have fun!